Revolution Resolutions, Part 4, to be humble towards God and others. It's a series on the book of Daniel. We're in chapter 4 right now. Uh, Chapter 4 deals with this Nebuchadnezzar talking, and he's talking about this dream and the situation that went on in his life. And I'm just going to pick out a few verses um, to instead of reading the whole thing. Daniel 4:29 through 31 says, 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as a royal residence? By my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you." Now, chapter 4 kind of starts out in retrospect with Nebuchadnezzar looking back at this incident and all the other signs and wonders that God has performed. And some of these other signs and wonders are Daniel interpreting a dream without being told the dream. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah being thrown in the fiery furnace without getting burned up. There's all these things, and yet Nebuchadnezzar has this arrogant pride about him. And what this whole chapter is about is Nebuchadnezzar had this dream of this tall, massive tree that reached up into the heavens, and birds found their dwelling there, and all the beasts of the earth found their place underneath it. And then this being came down and spoke to it, and then the tree fell over, and there was only a stump left. And Nebuchadnezzar wanted to, or couldn't find anybody at first to interpret the dream, and then he got to Daniel and asked Daniel to interpret the dream, and he told him the dream. And the reason why he trusted Daniel's or sought Daniel out was because Daniel had the spirit of his gods in him, and so even at all these things that Nebuchadnezzar knew about with God, he still didn't want to honor God with life and everything else. And well, a year later, here's Nebuchadnezzar being boastful and prideful again, and boom, this prophecy comes true. And for for 7 periods of time, which we interpret as 7 years, King Nebuchadnezzar pretty much went insane. He lost his mind. It says that he went out and was like some of the cattle. He ate the grass, his hair, and I think it's his arm, chest, hair, leg, back, facial, all his hair. It was like eagles. It's just nappy, a look to it, just not a way you would expect a king to look. And it says that his nails were like that of birds' claws or talons. And see, in our society, there's so much pride. People talking about how they're the king of this or the king of that. How they talk with one another. Say, "You do you, I'm going to do me. I'm going to do what I have to do to get what I want." All these types of things. It's all self-centered. They're acting like Nebuchadnezzar, like their feet don't stink, like they got it together. It's all pride. Every little bit of it is pride. And yet they don't want to check it. People don't want to check it. And the issue is because nobody wants to come in second. No one wants to be the first loser, in a sense. And that pride is something that people, even in the church, we know it's sinful, but yet we don't talk about it because we don't want to step on people's toes. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. But pride is something that needs to be dealt with because it's something that's so detrimental to somebody that's prideful and arrogant. And we're with this story, not everybody who's prideful and arrogant is going to turn into a beast in this sense, but pride itself is so rooted inside of mankind that it almost is a beast within us, that it overcomes us, that it becomes something that we sometimes may not even be able to control because of our reliance on it. There's so many people who say stuff like, that won't never happen to me. That will never happen to me. Really? You know, just think about how many ministers, people who say that they love God and everything, have left the ministry or been forced to leave the ministry because they've committed sexual immorality. You know, there's so many that have done stuff like that, and I don't think that any one of them went into the ministry thinking that they're going to mess up in that way. But see, I doubt they ever checked themselves, saying, you know, hey, I could be vulnerable to this. Pride got them to think, you know what, I'm above sinning in that way. I'm above doing that. You know, many times pride is just a band-aid on a heart wound. You know, there's people's pasts and the things that they go through and the things that they remember and they constantly are dealing with, that they cover with pride and arrogance in order so they don't have to feel they don't have to let anybody know what they're going through. They don't have to feel that hurt openly, so they cover it up with pride and arrogance. Now it's better to lose your pride with someone you love rather than to lose that someone you love over your useless pride. Uh, there's people whose pride has destroyed their families. Divorces have happened because of pride. Son and father, mother and daughter relationships have been totally dismantled because of pride. People don't want to forgive or say I'm sorry. People don't want to do those things because their pride keeps them from it. There's so many people who stay in the pew rather than going to the altar because of pride. Their pride keeps them in the pew because they don't want everybody to think that, oh, hey, they're not as good of a Christian. All that's nonsense. You know, it's hard enough to live a Christian life with as holy and righteous as possible, and to add pride on it, you're just covering up those things. You're tainting those words with pride. It's fake holiness, fake righteousness, when all it is pride that's keeping you from going to the altar and needing God to change your life. You know, C.S. Lewis said this: a proud man is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you're looking down, you can't see something that's above you. That's so true. When there's people that are arrogant, whether it's a church body, you know, a me church in a sense, or a person, a group of people, when they look down, when they don't look up, they don't acknowledge that God's there. A church can have the greatest programs, the greatest momentum, and all that, but if it doesn't have the presence of God, then it's nothing. I mean, that pastor could be preaching a whole bunch of other stuff, or whatever else. I mean, if it's all about pride, if it's all about some person's ministry rather than God's ministry, watch out. Pride is so dangerous, and yet it's sneaky, but yet it's not. We see pride coming. Many times we deal with pride within our own lives, or see people that are prideful and arrogant, but yet we don't say anything. We say something maybe when they leave the room, but yet that's a whole other issue. But pride is something that we've got to come to terms with and say, this is wrong. We need to humble ourselves before God. That's the solution. Say, you know what? I need to make sure that what I say and what I do, I honor God with everything. I mean, God gives me breath, the breath that I breathe, the air that I take in, the oxygen comes from God and His plan. Trees have been planted in this world to take out the stuff in the air so that I can survive and live and breathe. And yet we don't think about that. We don't think about how God created everything in such perfection so that we could live. And we go on every day acknowledging or not acknowledging Him, and only acknowledging ourselves and what we've accomplished and what we've done. Man, how great have we slapped God in the face with our own selfish pride. we can't be self-centered. Pride and arrogance only set you up to fall and to be humiliated. They said the bigger they are, the harder they fall. The more pride someone has, I think, the greater the destruction when they become humiliated. It's kind of like Humpty Dumpty, that little kid story. It says Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses, all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Well, in reality, with people, we go to all the other kings and all the other things in this world to try to put our lives back together, to boast our pride, to make us feel better about ourselves and all these different things. But yet we don't go to the one we should have gone to first. We don't go to the real King of Kings. And we miss out on what the greatness that He has for us. He's the only one that can heal our hurts and put our brokenness together. Pride can't heal our present situation. Only humbleness to go towards God can. When we say, I don't need to pray about that, or I can do it on my own. I can, I'll be all right. All these different things, saying that, I'm good, I'm fine. When our lives are upside down, doesn't turn them right side up. It only covers up the pain, it only covers up the hurt. We need to become vulnerable to God and say, God, I need you. I need this situation, what I'm doing with my finances, my home life, everything, my work, all of it. God, I need to bring before you, God, because I can't do this life on my own. God, I need you. Our pride can't be something that destroys us before God. The thing that caused Nebuchadnezzar to be restored back to his kingdom was his realization of who God is. I'll read that. It's in verse 34 through 37. It says, At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified Him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as He pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back His hand or say to Him, What have you done? At the same time that my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything He does is right and all His ways are just, and those who walk in pride He is able to humble. I think Nebuchadnezzar, if he didn't turn back to God, if he didn't look up and realize who God is, he would have died a beast. In that dream, it was said that, when he comes to that, there would be a period of time that he'd go through, and then he'd come to that realization. So there was a knowing that he would come to that realization, but I believe that if he never did, God would have left him as a beast. Our pride can be something that destroys us. There's a healthy pride. We can be proud of what God has done in our lives. King Nebuchadnezzar, he made a prideful statement. He says, I became even greater than what I was before. But it wasn't because of me. It was because the King of all kings, God, the God of heaven. That's the kind of pride we need to have. Here's this king, this pagan king, who first sought somebody else sought Daniel out because he said that he had his gods in him. Well, it really is the God of gods, the King of all kings, Yahweh, Jehovah. He is our God. He is everything to us, and we need to realize that we can't be prideful. The only thing that we can boast in is to boast in God. That's what Paul says, that if I'm going to boast in the Lord. That's what we need to boast about, that I'm no longer a slave to sin. I'm no longer less than anybody else. I am a child of God. I have greatness, but that greatness is because of the Spirit of God living in me. I'm not a proud man. I'm proud to be a man of God. That's our attitude. That's the heart we need to have. To humble ourselves before God and to live humbly amongst the people that we live with.